Joe Biden is about to embark on the fight of his life when he contends for another term of presidency at the end of this year. But there's one issue that could be Biden's undoing. That issue is the border. Many commentators say the border crisis is Joe Biden's biggest failure as president, reflecting his weak grip on power and inability to lead. And this failure is translating to record low polling numbers for the president. Sky News All Stars Kristin Tate, Rita, Panahi and Liz Storer dissect Biden's border failure and analyse if it will be the issue that cost Joe Biden another term in office. The United States of America is in a border crisis and Joe Biden is at the helm. Sky News All-Star Kristin Tate says Americans are watching the destruction of their country.
Yes, we are watching the destruction of our country happening in real time right now. And thank God for Texas Governor Greg Abbott for holding the line and doing the right thing, doing what the federal government is supposed to be doing. Not only is the federal government, not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're preventing Texas from doing what's supposed to be done. It's absolutely infuriating. As of right now, Chris, there are 25 other governors from Republican states around the country who have signed a letter supporting Greg Abbott. And this is going to be a big deal in the coming election because there are lots of Americans, especially on the coasts, who for the first time in my lifetime are talking about the border crisis with a heightened level of concern. This has always been a theoretical discussion until now because Abbott is sending thousands of migrants up to these coastal cities that have never had to deal with this problem firsthand. We have had 6 million illegals released into this country under Biden, millions more who have not been caught at all and are in this country. So this is a serious problem, and it is the destruction of the United States, and I don't say that lightly.
And it's not only voters who are fed up with Joe Biden's handling of the border. The governor of Texas is at war with the Democrats after receiving no help from the feds to combat this issue, says Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
Now, let's talk about the illegal immigration crisis. It's worsening under the Biden administration. Record numbers have crossed illegally. And we've just had the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision side with the Biden administration, directing Texas to allow federal border agents access to the Mexico border where the state had deployed razor wire. You wrote a brilliant article arguing that Texas has the right to interpret the Constitution independently amid Biden's failure to secure the border. Tell me more about this, and I talked earlier about this split in the US. We've now got 24 Republican governors pledging to stand with Texas, to stand with Governor Greg Abbott.
So first of all, an astonishing ruling from the United States Supreme Court. 5-4 decision basically saying that Border Patrol can go down there and physically take down barriers that Texas put up. Unfortunately, it wasn't just John Roberts, our very mercurial swing justice, but it was also Amy Coney Barrett, unfortunately, the Trump nominee who voted with the left there. Which is part of a very troubling trend, by the way, Rita. If Trump does retake office come this November, which I hope that he does, we're going to have to do a lot better, actually, than Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. They're right more often than they're wrong, but neither is Clarence Thomas, neither is Sam Alito. But table that for another day. Yeah. When it comes to the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border, look, it's very straightforward. So America has a unique constitutional system. It was drafted in 1787. It's since been duplicated in many ways throughout the world. We basically have a system of dual spheres of sovereignty, where both the national government and the 50 state governments are themselves sovereign entities within their own legitimate spheres of influence. What that means at the state level is that the states have the right to exclude. The right to exclude is the very defining feature of sovereignty. The late great Justice Antonin Scalia explicated this at great length in his brilliant writing in a 2012 case called Arizona versus United States, where then we were dealing with an illegal immigration crisis, not in Texas, but in Arizona. And what Scalia asked then is, he said, if Arizona does not have the right to secure its borders when the federal government, then the Obama administration, when they fail to do so, then Arizona ceases to be a sovereign state. And when you contemplate the fact that it was actually the 50 states in America that created the national government, our national government is one of strictly enumerated powers. They were the ones who created the government in the first place. They never would have bothered to create this whole national government if you would give the national government the idea that they could intrude and tell you who to let in when thousands, hundreds of thousands are flooding in over the course of a month, 2 months, however long the time is. So it's just utterly insane there. But I do feel compelled to make one important distinction. What the court actually said is that U.S. Border Patrol has the right to go in and to snip this razor wire that Texas has put up. They did not say anything about whether Texas can actually put up new razor wire. So I think that Greg Abbott and his Department of Public Safety are well within their rights to do exactly that. And the most important part here, Rita, Biden's going to blink. He's bluffing because his approval rating on the immigration issue here in America is -25, -30. He is not going to risk a grand showdown against the big red state, the state of Texas, joined, as you said, by 24 other Republican governors. He's ultimately going to bluff. Greg Abbott should call that bluff, and he stands to benefit politically from it.
So much so that Texas decided to take things into their own hands and arrest illegals crossing the border, says Sky News All-Star Liz Storer.
Now to the US, where in the absence of any action by the Biden administration to address the border crisis, Texas took matters into its own hands on Wednesday, with authorities arresting illegal immigrants, charging them with criminal trespassing. This is significant. These were the first arrests of illegal aliens since the state took control of their part of the border with Mexico last week, given federal officials were letting anyone and everyone through. Texas is now in a fierce standoff with the Biden administration, blocking the US Border Patrol's access to Eagle Pass. But what other options did they have as 4,000 undocumented immigrants a day flood into the US?
And just this week, Joe Biden was slammed for lying about his proactiveness to secure the border, saying he's done all he can do.
Or is there more you could do? Absent
Not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work right.
And it's not only Joe Biden and the Democrats swinging open the border to illegal immigrants. Sky News All-Star James Morrow has revealed a coordinated effort by NGOs to weaken American borders.
These pictures were taken by Brett Weinstein in Darien, Panama, where migrants are transiting from around the world to enter the U.S. You see the logos of UN and American aid agencies and something called the Global Brigades, all working to help these migrants get up and into the U.S., as well as tent villages with signage in Chinese, which really makes you wonder what exactly is going on here. Now, what it looks like to me is a coordinated effort by NGOs and the UN and other global left-wing charities, I use that word advisedly, to weaken and flood America's border and eventually sovereignty.
And there are fears that the border problem that has already brought the southern states to their knees will get even worse with a new US Supreme Court ruling.
That footage of the border shows federal agents raising razor wire to let migrants in. The video was taken last year, but stand by to see more chaotic scenes just like this, because the US Supreme Court has narrowly ruled that Border Patrol agents are allowed to cut through or remove razor wire that was installed by Texas in an effort to prevent illegal border crossings. The vote was 5-4.
But Biden seems to have finally realised the seriousness of the situation and changed his tune in relation to the border, now echoing Donald Trump and saying he will lock it down. But former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says Biden's backflip is a baseless public relations stunt.
There's another sign of weakness, Sean Spicer. I mean, Joe Biden has obviously been hopelessly weak at stopping illegal immigrants. More than 2 million have crossed the Mexican border in just 1 year. I mean, the numbers are just staggering, including even young Chinese men of military age. A boatload of illegals even landed in California last week. But now, a plot twist. Joe Biden says he will now lock down the border if the Republicans in Congress help him. Can you explain Joe Biden suddenly talking like a Donald Trump?
Yeah, well, there's two things, Andrew. Number one, I had Chad Wolf on my podcast today, and so folks in the around the globe, Australia, otherwise, can download it and listen to it. Chad was the acting Secretary of Homeland Security at the end of the Trump administration. And I asked him point blank, could President Biden be doing more at the border right now, unilaterally without Congress? And he listed off several things, including filing asylum in third-party countries, remain in Mexico, and the list went on. Point being is that Joe Biden today could be doing a multitude of things to help protect the country. I have posited for a long time, Andrew, that this is not a sign of weakness. This is actually their plan. They want to allow people to come in. They have said since day one, our border is open, everybody is welcome. This is to them trying to cater, as in an election year, to pretend to suburban women and places around the country that that's not really, that they're going to pretend that they're actually doing something. But the reality is this is the Democrats' plan. They are bringing in people. They want them as future voters. There's no question that that's what they're doing. And so him posturing this weekend and saying, if you pass legislation that he knows won't pass, right? So when you know something's not going to happen, it makes it a lot easier to act tough. And he's saying, I'd shut down the border on day one. Well, number one, he knows the legislation's not going to pass. Number two, he knows that he has the ability to do it right now. And number three, as I pointed out, he doesn't want to do it. He just wants to be able to cater to that part of his party that actually does care. But let's remember, a good chunk, probably a majority of the Democratic Party right now doesn't want a closed and secure border. They want people coming in. And so he's trying to have it both ways with his party right now. To those people who are worried, he wants to pretend that he's being tough. But to those people who really want an open and porous border, he's letting them know, don't worry, I'm not changing the policy, because they all know that Congress isn't going to pass this thing because it's not a border security bill, it's an immigration bill.
And Kristin Tate says the border will be a defining issue for voters in the lead up to the election.
The border issue alone could get Donald Trump back into the White House in 2024, couldn't it?
That's absolutely correct, especially when you're talking to folks who live in the southern part of the United States, like Texas. They are all voting for Trump because of that reason. Back home in Texas, all my neighbors, they're kind of like independent voters, moderate types. Most of them voted for Joe Biden in the last election. They have all said no more, and it's because of that border issue. And I have to tell you, Steve, even up north, here in New Hampshire, down in Boston, where I have a lot of family, the immigration issue is starting to become a big deal as well, because you have Governor Greg Abbott down in Texas bussing up thousands of migrants to these other northern, more blue states that didn't really have to deal with this problem firsthand. And now they are realizing the consequences of a wide open border. So you're absolutely right. The border really could be the #1 issue in this election. And if it is, that is very bad news for Joe Biden and the Democrats.